Yesterday and the day before, we learned about 45, 45, 90 triangles, and we learned the properties that were specific to those types of triangles, and we learned how to use those properties to solve problems related to those triangles. Today, we're going to learn about a different type of special right triangle, and that's called a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Okay, with 30, 60, 90 triangles, the thing that makes them this type of triangle is kind of like what we talked about with the 45, 45, 90s. It will have a 30-degree angle in it, it'll have a 60-degree angle, and it'll have a 90-degree. Okay, so the 90-degree would be, if I drew this triangle right there, that would be the 90-degree angle. The 30-degree angle would be the smaller angle, so it'd be this one. And then the 60-degree angle would be the one that's kind of a little bit in the middle of those two, okay? So that's actually what a 30, 60, 90 triangle is it's going to have a 30-degree, a 60-degree, and a 90-degree angle, okay? So now we're going to learn about the properties of this type of triangle and be able to use those properties to be able to solve for the sides of this triangle, okay? So remember, before we kind of get started, because it is a right triangle, if you have two sides of the triangle and you have to find the other side, you can always use Pythagorean theorem, okay? But in these problems, you're going to notice that we're not given exactly the same type of information that we would be given for a Pythagorean theorem problem, okay? So that's what we're learning, all right? So just to kind of make sure that we're good with understanding the parts of the triangle, remember the side that's across from the 90-degree angle will be your hypotenuse. So we're going to label it. This is your hypotenuse. And then remember that the angles actually kind of tell you a little bit about the sides that are opposite of them. And so if you think back to the 45, 45, 90 triangle, the two sides that were opposite of the 45-degree angles were the same because the angles were the same. But notice in this one, that angle and the 30-degree angle are different. And so because of that, the sides that are opposite of those angles will have a different length to them, okay? And so the side that's opposite of the 30-degree angle will be a little bit shorter. So we actually label this as the short leg because it is a leg, remember. The legs are the ones that surround that 90-degree angle. And then this side that's opposite of the 60-degree angle we call the longer leg or the long leg. All right, and so whenever we talk about the things that are special to this type of triangle, we use those terms, okay? So we're going to just list out to the side here what is so special about these sides, okay? And so the first thing that I want you to remember with these types of triangles is everything kind of revolves around whatever the length of this short leg is, okay? And so I call the short leg the all-important leg because if you know what the length of this side is right here, finding the other sides is actually very, very simple, okay? But if you're given one of these sides, you actually kind of have to work backwards before you can find other pieces of information, okay? And so today we're just learning the basics. So we're going to deal with problems that are a little bit easier, and then tomorrow we'll do some where you have to backtrack, okay? And so the first thing that you have to know about how these sides relate to each other is number one, the hypotenuse, the length of the hypotenuse is actually equal to whatever the length of the short leg is times 2. So if you know what the length of this side is, all you have to take is 2 times that length, and you will know what the hypotenuse is, okay? So the hypotenuse is equal to 2 times whatever the short leg is. The other thing that's important to this triangle is how the long leg relates to the short leg, okay? And so if you were having to find what the long leg is. So the long leg is actually equal to whatever the short leg is. So take whatever the length of the short leg, whatever that is. You actually have to take that times the square root of 3 this time to find the length of the long leg, okay? And now, if you remember when we talked about 45, 45, 90 triangles, we had a little square root 2 in it, okay? So the way that I kind of remember that the square root 3 goes with these types of triangles is I think, okay, 30, 60, 90 has a 3 in it. And so that reminds me that it's going to have the square root of 3 rather than the square root of 2, okay? Because you will have to memorize these. And so that's one way that you can remember it. Is the 30 has a 3 in it, so it's going to be the square root of 3, okay? You just have to remember how they relate. All right, so if you know what the short leg is in one of these triangles, to find the hypotenuse, you just take 2 times whatever that short leg is, and that'll give you the hypotenuse. And then to find the long leg, you just take whatever the length of that is and then multiply by square root of 3. And usually we will just simplify and we'll leave it the way it is. You'll see what I mean. All right, so let's do some problems. Let's see how this works with our problems. All right, so the first example, just like what we did before, take a look at your triangle, figure out what type of triangle it is. Okay, notice we have a 90 and we have a 30. And we're missing this angle. Think about what we talked about the other day. All the angles in a triangle have to add to be 180. So if you add these two, 90 plus the 30, you'll get 120. And if you subtract that from 180, you'll get 60. And so if you know that one of them's 90 and the other one's 30, then the other angle has to be 60. So you have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So because of that, that means that both of these properties are true, okay? And so let's work with those properties to help us find x and y, all right? So we have to find what the length of x is, and we have to find what the length of y is, all right? So take a look at what you're given, okay? We're given this side right here. That has a length of 4, and notice it's across from your 30. So that means that that is actually my short leg. That's my all-important leg. And so if we know what that is, it's actually going to be pretty easy. We just have to multiply it by 2, and we'll know what the hypotenuse is. And then we just take it times the square root of 3, and we'll know what the longer leg is, okay? And so which one is my hypotenuse? I'm going to try to find that one first. Well, remember the hypotenuse is across from the 90-degree angle, so that means y is my hypotenuse. And so to find that, I just have to take, so remember, the hypotenuse is equal to 2 times whatever the short leg is. So because y is my hypotenuse, that means I just have to take the short leg times 2, and that will give me what the hypotenuse is. So y would equal 8, okay? So y equals 8. And actually, I'm going to write that over here, and then I'll just write my final answer over here. That way I can circle it in a second, okay? And then my x, well, if you notice the x is across from that 60-degree angle. So that means that that is my longer leg, okay? And so to find the longer leg, I have to take whatever the short leg is times the square root of 3, all right? So x is my longer leg. So to find that, I have to take whatever the short leg is, which is 4, times the square root of 3. And now notice that won't simplify without getting a decimal. And so if that's the case, you don't want to get the decimal for these problems right now. Just leave it the way it is, and there is your answer. So the hypotenuse is equal to 8, and then the long leg is equal to 4 square root of 3. All right, let's do another one. So zoom in just a bit. With the next one, look at the triangle first. You've got a right angle, you've got a 60-degree angle, and then you're missing that one. Just like what we did before, add these two, subtract it from 180, and you'll notice that that equals 30. So it is a 30, 60, 90. And then look at what you're given. We're given this side right here. and it's across from your 30-degree angle. So that means that that is your short leg. So you're given the all-important leg, just like before. And so to find all the other stuff, it's actually going to be pretty easy, okay? So remember, your hypotenuse is equal to 2 times the short leg, and then the long leg is equal to whatever the short leg is times the square root of 3, okay? So let's figure out which one is my hypotenuse here. Which one's across from that 90-degree angle? Well, that would be y. So this is my hypotenuse. Sometimes it does help to label. So to find the hypotenuse, you have to take 2 times, and I'll just put an S for the short leg, okay? So to find that, I have to take 2 times, and then my short leg is 15, okay? So y would equal 2 times 15 is 30, okay? And then, so I'll write that over here. And then to find x, well, x is my long leg because it's across from my 60, which is my middle angle, or the angle that's in the middle of the two, okay? And so that's my long leg. So remember, to find that one, you have to take the short leg times the square root of 3. So my short leg is 15. That's an S. No, it looks like a 5, but it's an S. So my short leg is 15, so it would be 15 times whatever the square root of 3 is. Oh, you guys can't see that. And so, again, just like the other one, I can't really simplify this anymore without getting a decimal. And so that's as far as I can go. So x would equal 15 square root of 3. And then that's it. All right. All right, let's practice another one. So we got a 30, a 90. So then think about what that one would be. You can add these, subtract it from 180, and you would know that this has to be a 60. So it's another 30, 60, 90 triangle. And we have to find, once again, whatever x equals and whatever the length of y is. All right. So think about what we're given. And this one looks a little bit messier, but you'll notice that it doesn't work too much different than what we had. Okay. You just have to do a little extra simplifying in the end. All right. So notice that's across from my 30-degree angle. So that means it's the smaller side because it's across from the smaller angle. So it's the short leg. Okay. And then the y is across from the 90. So that means that's your hypotenuse. And then the x is across from your 60. So that means that's the long leg. Okay. And so a lot of times you'll notice that I find the hypotenuse first just because it's a little bit easier. And so I'm going to find the hypotenuse. So remember, the hypotenuse, I just have to take 2 times the short leg. And so I'll go to the side and do a little bit of work here just because that I'm going to have to simplify a little bit, okay? So if I take the hypotenuse is equal to 2 times whatever the short leg is. So my hypotenuse is y. So y would equal 2 times, well, my short leg is all of this right here. So I'm just going to bring it down here, 8 square root 3, all right? So the reason I have to do a little bit of extra simplifying is because with this one, and I guess it's not too much different than the other problems. Notice the 2 and the 8 are outside of the little radical. So you would multiply those. So 2 times 8 is 16. And then that square root of 3 doesn't have anything to multiply with because there's not another radical. And so it's just going to come down. And then from there, if anything else simplifies without getting a decimal, then do that. But if not, you just leave it the way it is. So that's as far as I can go without getting a decimal. And so that is the length of y. All right. So then to find x, well, x was my long leg. And remember, the long leg is equal to the short leg times the square root of 3. So I'm going to go to the side and do a little side work here too. So to find x, I have to take the short leg, which is 8 square root of 3, times the square root of 3. Okay, so I just plugged it in my formula. The short leg times the square root of 3. Short leg times the square root of 3. Okay, and so with this one, we'd still have to do a little simplifying. Notice 8 times, well, what's technically on the outside of the radical here, it's actually like a 1. So it'd be like 8 times 1, excuse my little messed up multiplication symbol there. 8 times 1 is 8. And then now we have something that will multiply with the square root of 3 because you have the square root of 3 times, and then you have another square root of 3 over there. Sorry, that was bothering me. All right, so square root of 3 times the square root of 3. You leave it under the radical until you actually take the square root. So 3 times 3 is 9. And then the 8 comes over. And then think about what is the square root of 9. Well, the square root of 9, what number times itself gives you 9? And that would be 3. And then you just take 8 times 3. So 8 times 3 is 24. And so that is what my long leg, which was x, what that is equal to. So x is equal to 24. So there we go. Let's do one more problem just so that we can kind of drill in, because I know that one was a little bit harder because we had a little bit more to simplify with, and then I'll let you guys work. All right, so the last one before you guys work on some of these basic problems is this one right here. All right, so again, look at the triangle. Make sure that it is the type of triangle that you're using the shortcuts for, because if not, you could mess up the problem and get it wrong, okay? So you got a 90 and a 60. If you add them and subtract them from 180, the other one you're going to find out that the other angle, will be 30. All right, and then we have to find x and y. All right, so think about what you're given. So we're given the side that's across from the 30. So remember, if it's across from the 30, that's the shorter side because that angle's not as big. So that would technically be the short leg. And then we have to find this side, which that's the side across from my 90. So that's your hypotenuse. And then we have to find this side. That's across from the 60. So that would be your long leg. All right. And so again, I'm going to find my hypotenuse first. The hypotenuse is equal to the 2 times whatever the short leg is. Okay. So to find y, and I'm going to go to this side, do a little side work. I have to take 2 times my short leg. My short leg is 2 square root of 2. All right, multiply the outside numbers. So I'm going to just bring my y down. 2 times 2 is 4. And then that square root of 2 doesn't have anything to multiply with, so it just comes down. Okay, and then from here, I can't do anything else. Like the square root of 2 doesn't simplify, and so there's nothing else I can do without getting a decimal. So that's actually as far as I can go there. So y would equal 4 square root of 2, whatever that is if you typed it in. Okay, but you want to leave them because with these problems, you're practicing leaving it in radical form usually. Okay, and then to find x, well, x is my long leg. So think about that little trick or that little property. The long leg is equal to the short leg times the square root of 3. Okay, and so to find the long leg, which is x, I'm going to go down here and put my work. X is equal to the short leg, which is 2 square root 2, times, short leg times the square root of 3. Okay, so again, the 2's on the outside. Think about what would be here. It'd technically be a 1 in front. So it'd be 2 times 1, which is 2. And then the square root of 2 times the square root of 3. You leave it under the radical. 2 times 3 is 6. And then if there is a way to simplify this, you simplify it. But if not, you've got to leave it so you don't end up with a decimal. And notice square root of 6 will not break down because there is not a perfect square that goes into it. And 6 is not a perfect square to begin with. And so that is actually as far as we can go. So that is what your long leg is equal to. So x equals 2 times the square root of 6. And there is my answer. So hopefully this helps. Let me know if you have questions. Have a wonderful day.